All right, we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Happy Thursday, Gentleman's Friday, whatever you want to call it. I will set up shop over here, make sure everything's good. We have so much to talk about. As usual, Den is here helping out with moderation. So if you have questions, comments, leave them in the YouTube comments and we'll get to them in between stories. Remember, you can support this channel by going to patreon.com/Hemant. And you can always subscribe for free at friendlyatheist.com if you want to get the newsletter, which you should. All right. So many things to talk about. Let me pull this up and we'll get started in just a second here. Let's talk about what's happening this weekend because the White House is actually hosting what amounts to a Christian nationalist rally on the National Mall. It's supposed to be a celebration of America's 250th anniversary, signing of the Declaration of Independence, but we're very much no one cares about the Declaration at this particular event because what this event is all about is promoting Jesus. Here's one of the images they have in the video promoting this. Join us on the National Mall to rededicate America as one nation under God, which we'll talk about that in a second. This is called Rededicate 250, National Jubilee of Prayer, Praise, and Thanksgiving. And yeah, they say that it's a way for all Americans to come together with scripture, testimony, prayer, and rededication of our country as one nation under God. And of course, they're only referring to the Christian God because this administration has made clear that religious freedom only applies to conservative Christians. They're also calling it a rededication, which feels wrong because that implies that we were once dedicated to God and now we're not. That's not true. That's not how anything works. We were never dedicated to God. So, how can you rededicate our country to God? Now, it's one thing if this was just a handful of Christians pulling this off or an organization or two pulling this off, but that's not the case at all. There are corporate sponsors for this event, and a lot of the funding comes from millions in public dollars earmarked for the nation's 250th birthday celebration. That's according to the Washington Post. We actually don't know what the budget is for this event yet. And I want to show you this website here. This is the official website for the event, freedom250.org. But it's very much just promoting this false idea that everything about our founding happens to be in pursuit of Christianity. And you could see Christianity all over this page, as if what these guys were talking about was Jesus. This goes on for a while here. Be a patriot, celebrate, participate. And again, it's what? Pray for America. By the way, I know I've made videos about this picture before. This is George Washington praying. That's a thing that never happened. They just made up the idea that he did that. Someone painted it, and now Christian right people are like, see, it's in a painting. It must be true. But this is very much a religious ceremony, not a patriotic ceremony. And look at all the people they have sponsoring this thing. These are just the A's. It's every single conservative group you can imagine. So that's disturbing enough as is. A bunch of senators have already sent letters to whoever reads these things arguing that because the White House is participating in this religious event, it could violate federal bribery, conflict of interest, and ethics laws, which would be a serious charge if I thought anyone in the government would take any of this shit seriously. It's a 9-hour event. After it's done, there will be a worship service. And the people who are involved in this are all the people you never want to see participating in anything. Just to check this out. This is the Roots of Revival taking place before the official event. And let's see if you could make out some of the people here. You have in the center, right above the G, you have Sean Foyt, who is the COVID super spreader guy. Next to him, under the FU, in future, appropriately enough, is Eric Metaxas. You got Greg Locke right there. I mean, it is all of the worst people you can imagine. And also, I was actually surprised to see right under the TH in faith, that's Mark Driscoll, a guy who's so toxic, even Christians pushed him out of their church. So these are all MAGA aligned people. And if you're trying to wonder, if you're trying to figure out, is this a Christian event or a White House event? Look at what some of these people were saying earlier this year as the planning for this started to take place. This is Sean Foyt again. Just got off an amazing call with the White House, planning some big worship events for America 250 this summer. ... I never would have imagined our own government getting behind revival meetings. Even Sean Foyt's like, you guys, they're promoting our religion. The government's promoting our religion. Like, you're not supposed to say that out loud. But Foyt's not good at keeping that sort of secret. But to be clear, the White House is saying this too. This is literally, this is whitehouse.gov's page talking about this thing. And they say, what are their signature events for the 250th celebration? And they have this section, Rededicate 250, National Prayer Event. And let's zoom in here for a second. Look at what they say. At sunrise, the National Mall will transform into a large-scale revival, beginning with worship, testimonies, and music, and culminating in a powerful national moment of prayer. A 9-hour moment of prayer. Streamed to parishes, the event is amplified through coordinated media and a lead-up series with pastors and partners highlighting the church with a capital C's role in history and civic life. A main stage and faith-based activations, I don't know if that's grammatically correct, will set the scene for high-energy praise, prominent Christian artists, no they're not, it's Sean Foyt, and major faith leaders, creating an energized moment of unity. Like, no it's not. There's nothing unifying about saying we all believe in the God of Sean Foyt. Like, this is the White House promoting this. This is not just Christian groups doing this. Outside of like the White House cabinet, many of whom are participating in this event. I don't know if Pete Hegseth is going to do a reading from Pulp Fiction, but maybe. You also have, who's speaking at this? You have singers from Liberty University and Grand Canyon University, two schools that screwed over their own students, according to the Department of Education, but under Trump, they don't have to pay fines for that because no one cares about the students. You have evangelist Franklin Graham. You have MAGA pastor Robert Jeffress. You have I got to show you this. Look at this poster, featured speakers, just the nightmare blunt rotation of them all. Mike Johnson, Pete Hegseth, Franklin Graham. In the middle of the bingo card is the guy who played Jesus in The Chosen, which is a show you either very much know or you've never heard of. And they gotta look at who's flanking Jesus on his left and right there. You have two people who are not Protestant. They are both Catholic leaders, in the case of Timothy Dolan, a former Catholic leader, but they're both very conservative Catholics. So like even the non-white evangelicals they have at this thing are conservatives who very much support the idea of Christian nationalism. And I didn't realize the Duck Dynasty family was still doing anything, but there you go, Sadie Robertson Huff. These are people who are speaking at this thing. The Guardian put it this way. The lineup includes no Muslims, no representatives of historically black churches, no indigenous faith leaders, and no mainline Protestants. Because, no, you're not invited. Your religions don't count. And in case you were wondering, hey, are we sure the government's behind this? Yeah, the Air Force, Navy, and the Marines are sending military bands to play at this event. So when newspapers asked, when they asked church-state separation leaders about all this, here's what one of them told the Washington Post. Check this out. I'm unaware of anything like this with this involvement of senior government officials on this scale, trying to paint this false picture of the United States as a quote-unquote Christian nation, said Amanda Tyler, executive director of the Baptist Joint Committee, a Baptist group that aims to promote religious liberties, like the Good Baptists. Trump's rhetoric in the past 18 months is how he's going to make America Christian again, that it's his job to push religion. This is all part of that piece. Yeah, that is accurate. There was another thing to also share with you down here. They interviewed Kevin Kruse, the great historian, and look at what he says. It's not causal. Look at the document talking about like the founding documents. The only rules they wrote about religion were ones that keep religion at arm's length. No establishment, no limits on free exercise, no religious test for public office. There's a difference between saying America is a nation with many Christians in it and that America is a nation dedicated to Christianity and defined by it. Those are very different things. No kidding. Absolutely correct. And again, it's one thing when David Barton is spreading lies about our founding because he's one dude with a big platform, but now his lies are getting amplified by Republicans. When they asked a Trump spokesperson about the fact that, like, this isn't very inclusive, look at what the Trump spokesperson said here. The White House directed questions about the Jubilee to Freedom 250. An advisor to the group, Danielle Alvarez, said the organization welcomed input from faith leaders and communities across the country, and the event will bring together diverse voices from many faiths, backgrounds, and communities to reflect on the extraordinary story of America. Yeah, diverse voices from like far-right Christianity to really far-right Christianity, because you're not getting any other religion in there. It's so frustrating. Like, it's some of the people who are organizing this thing or participating in it, they have said that, they should be doing this. Of course, they're not inviting Muslims, they're not inviting atheists to this thing because no one would ever want to pray to a God you don't believe in. And yet, here are these same people pushing their faith on a majority of Americans who don't share their particular brand of Christianity. And if the country gave a damn about our founding ideals, which is something we ought to be considering at the 250th birthday, none of this would be happening because church-state separation is very much an idea that was there at the founding of our country. So instead, what you get are the same people who have been spending years trying to spread lies about our founding. Look at this. The all-day event includes military bands, this is from the Washington Post, 6 Christian musical performers and speakers organized around 3 pillars, which the website listed as miracles God imparted on America in the past, personal testimonies of God's healing, and a unified moment of rededication. So miracles, which are bullshit, personal testimonies of God's healing, which are all anecdotal and who the hell cares, and a unified moment of rededication, which is not unifying because we are not unified under the Christian God. So this whole event is built around 3 different kinds of lies. Oh, but don't worry, it'll also feature one of the 6 18-wheeler Freedom trucks. Oh, what are those all about? They're traversing the country to teach about the founding of the nation. The material was created by 2 organizations that have led efforts to inject conservative content in K-12 classrooms, PragerU and Hillsdale College. So it's all the same people who have been pushing to teach revisionist white Christian history in lieu of like Black history, American history, anything like that. Those people are the ones behind this event. If you're looking for anything uplifting out of this, I will say there are alternative events also taking place. I just want to show you one of these. This is taking place May 30th in Philadelphia, which is an appropriate place to have anything about the founding of our country, reclaiming the promise of pluralism. And this is a joint effort from like American Atheists and a couple of church-state separation and advocacy groups like that. But look at this. This is actually really nice to read. America Beyond 250, Reclaiming the Promise of Pluralism, is a half-day event that will push back against the dangerous and exclusionary narratives of white Christian nationalism and advance a vision of a more inclusive and democratic future. At a time when debates over history, identity, and belonging are intensifying at all levels, this event brings together advocates on the front lines, public thinkers, scholars, and community leaders to confront the stakes of our current moment and to imagine what comes next and what we need to do to make the vision a reality. Love it. Love it so much. And they got an actual diverse group of people. Kenyatta's fantastic if you've ever heard him speak. Nick Fish is the president of American Atheists. But again, there are people trying to push back against this white Christian nationalist rally with a few tokens mixed in there. I mean, just to sum this all up, what's disturbing to me is not just the selfishness and ignorance of everyone involved. It's really the way they are tying patriotism in to what really is a religious rally, as if everyone who doesn't share their faith is inherently un-American, right? These people routinely complain that Christians are the most persecuted group in America, to the point where the Trump administration put together a sham task force dedicated to studying anti-Christian bias in America. And yet here they are using the levers of power and every connection that they have to promote their religion over other religions and religion over non-religion, right? These are the same levers they use to oppress everyone who's not part of their in-group, atheists, Muslims, even progressive Christians, right? They are going to use a taxpayer-funded stage backed by the White House with members of the cabinet speaking there, with military bands. They're going to have millions of dollars in public funding to claim they are victims of religious persecution. That's Christian nationalism for you. Like, there's nothing spiritual about it. There's no compassion there. They're not wasting time, like, giving out food to the hungry. Like, it's just about uniting conservative Christianity with every branch of government as quickly as they can. And this is what they're trying to do in history classes, too. They're trying to exclude voices who are not theirs to rewrite history and make themselves look like the good guys. And the saddest thing, the thing that I can't get over is we actually could be having a really amazing celebration of our country and all of its problems and maybe how far we've come. But instead, a bunch of idiots elected Trump again. And so we got this shit going on. This rally doesn't represent America historically or morally. And if anything, the founders went out of their way to prevent exactly this sort of thing from happening. I guess the best we can hope for is that maybe one day in the very near future, I hope, this sort of event is an example, like the textbook example of how we strayed from those founding ideals. All right, I'm going to stop there for now. And Den has some pictures for you while oh, thank you for being a YouTube member. I forgot we have questions too. What questions we got here? Who's paying for this? You are. Congratulations. Like I said, I don't know how much. Millions is the number I've heard, but I haven't seen any numbers attached to how expensive this is and how much money taxpayers are expected to fund for this specific event. They're doing this in direct violation of the Constitution. Isn't anyone doing anything to stop this crap? I mean, I will say all the church-state separation groups are well aware this is taking place. If they thought there was a legal case they could make to stop this, I feel like they would have done it. And I think the Trump administration's argument here is that they're not promoting Christianity. They're just promoting faith in general, even though this is a conservative Christian rally. But they're very much like, we're not promoting Christianity. We're promoting faith. And we're not even paying for all of it. We're just supporting a variety of events. This is one of them. Like, I don't know that church-state separation groups could do anything seriously to put a stop to this. What we can do is call it out for what it is, and make sure people understand this doesn't represent us. Wonder if this religious revival is one of the changes made to the UCMJ. You're going to have to help me out here. Which one thing are we talking about? In the military is one of the changes to the... can't remember. Uniform Code of Military Justice. I do not know enough to answer that question, but I can't imagine the military. I haven't seen anything that says the military's changed their position on this stuff. They're just very lenient, as we have seen over the past year and plus, of letting religious stuff slide a lot more than they should. Pete Hegseth being the top of the food chain there. Have you heard of the CTF argument? It's from a professor who essentially evaluated all of the world's religions on historical evidence. I do not know what you were referring to, so I don't have any real thoughts on it. I'm hoping this professor found that everyone failed. I'm very curious if this professor did not, but no, I don't know anything about what you're referring to. Send me an email. Never caught a live stream. Love your videos, especially as an ex-fundamentalist Christian. Wow, you helped me to my deconstruction. Thank you. Oh, that's very nice of you to say. Thank you so much. And good for you for leaving fundamentalist Christianity. Not an easy thing to do. So if I played a small part in that, that's awesome. Good for you. That is really hard to do. Thank you for telling me. All right, I'm jumping to another story. Give me a moment here. As Den is playing all of this, I will just tell you all of these images are things Den and I post on the Facebook page for Friendly Atheist all the time. So you should subscribe. I know it's Facebook. I know. But if you are on Facebook, there's a lot of these we post every day. Check it out. And I think I'm good for the next story. So let me get to this one. This is a story where when I started to talk about it on social media, I got a lot of atheists pushing back on this too, because I think there is some disagreement. But as usual, I'm right. So let me tell you what's going on here. You know, Texas is very much a conservative, Christian-led state. Well, the governor of Texas basically shut down a Muslim celebration of the end of Eid at a city-owned facility in Texas, using the excuse that they were discriminating, that the city, by allowing this Muslim event, was discriminating against non-Muslims. And, you know, Texas stands for nothing if not religious pluralism. Okay, so here's what happened. I want you to look at this website right here. This is for what? It would help if I actually had something. Let me try that again. Look at this website. It is for an indoor water park called Epic Waters. I mean, it looks great. It looks like the sort of place you want to bring your family. It's an indoor water park. You've seen these things before. Cool. So there's this indoor water park in the city of Grand Prairie, which is in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And the thing about this water park that you need to know is it's a city-owned facility, but it operates on its own. Like, the city isn't spending all of its time running it, but it is city-owned. And they also rent it out. So while it's open to members of the community, you can rent it out for private parties. It costs a lot of money because this place is huge. I believe one number I saw was like, it costs $5,000 an hour to rent this place out because it's so big and because you got to pay for the staff to do stuff and the equipment and all of that. But if you're throwing a massive party and you're charging people for entrance fees, you could probably recoup that money without a problem. So here's the thing. A couple of years ago, Muslims in the area said, we want to celebrate our holiday. So I think a couple of years ago, they just said, we're going to have an event at the water park. And they did, and it was fun. Last year, they said, you know what? There's a lot of people in this community who really want to celebrate it, but there were some concerns because if you go to a water park, just like if you go to a beach, there might be people wearing bathing suits that you find inappropriate for religious reasons, even though they have a right to be there. However, if you rent out the water park for your private party, you can institute a dress code for the people who buy tickets from you. That's totally a thing you can do. And that's what these Muslims did to last year when they rented out this space. Let me show you the flyer that they had last year because this becomes really important. Check out this flyer from last year. Second annual Eid al-Adha at Epic Water, $65. You could see these tents. I don't know if those are like modesty, like changing your clothing tents or like prayer tents, but whatever they are. And they said, I want to look at the fine print down here. This is how they put it. I'm going to remove myself so I can talk about this. It says, exclusive Muslim-only event for one day only. The entire park is reserved exclusively for the Muslim community. Enjoy the freedom of fun in a space designed with your values in mind. Modest dress code, halal meal with every ticket, private prayer area, closed to the public, Muslims only. And let's just get this out of the way. What they are saying, imagine this. Let's say I'm having a wedding. Let's say it's a religious wedding, but I rent out a publicly owned banquet hall. Okay, I'm allowed to rent out that space. The city cannot discriminate against me because of my religious beliefs. I'm allowed to rent out that space. But when I do, because it's my wedding, I can put together a guest list that only includes the people I want to include. And if those are people from my religious community or my family, I get to decide that. So when this group says Muslims only, what they're basically saying is we, the Muslims in this community, are renting out this space for our people to celebrate this religious holiday of sorts, this religious festival. So we can institute a modest dress code. We can give you a meal that you can eat. We can give you space so you could do prayers in private. And when they say Muslims only, because they clarified this, what they said is, I mean, anyone can come, but really we're doing this for Muslims in our community. And by the way, they did this last year. No one complained about it. It actually seemed to go really well. And people seemed to enjoy the fact that they could bring their families there. They could dress the way they wanted to dress, and they had access to this space for the hours that they did. So that's what they did last year. And the person who organized this event said, well, great, let's do it again this year. And this is the poster that they started posting on local Muslim social media outlets. Third annual DFW Epic Eid at Epic Indoor Park. Again, you could see on the top right there, Muslim only event. If you scroll down here, if I remove myself, it's basically the same poster. Exclusive access to the water park for one day only for Muslims only. A family-friendly environment, halal food, modest dress code, private prayer area. Yeah, it's the same flyer as last year, basically. So here's what happened. They post that flyer on social media. Right-wing people pick up on it. They alert, I guess, the New York Post. And now it becomes a thing among conservatives that this publicly owned facility is now promoting a Muslim-only event, and that discriminates against Christians. And that's not fair to Christians, because Christians should have everything they want always. Now, as soon as the article started circulating, the organizers of this event were like, okay, maybe the phrasing was bad, but we're not going to kick you out if you were Christian and you wanted to come to this event, as long as you're abiding by our rules when it comes to like the dress code and the fact that we're celebrating Eid. So they revised the poster, and this is the revised poster they put up. Let me show you this up here. Come back. Oh, here we go. Look at this new poster. Now it doesn't say Muslims only. Now it says modest dress only. And it also says here, look at this. Come and celebrate Eid with us. All are welcome. That was always true, but if people didn't get it before, they were spelling it out now. All are welcome. Halal food, modest dress code required for anyone who wants to participate. And by the way, look at what they say down here. Burkinis for ladies, swim trunks, and shirts for men. They actually had a page on their website where they said, if you're not sure what modest dress code means, here are some pictures. And they just show examples of what you could wear. I think their only concern is they're bringing together like Muslims in this community. They want to make sure people are wearing like one-piece bathing suits, that you're not showing a lot of skin because that's part of their religion. Okay, like they're allowed to set those ground rules. We can have a debate about whether they should have those rules, but those are their rules. They're allowed to set them. Otherwise, the poster is the same. Anyone can come as long as you respect our religious beliefs. So they thought, great, now we have solved all the complaints because we're not saying it's Muslims only because it never was Muslim only. We just meant that, hey, we're trying to organize something for the Muslims in our community, so here you go. But before I move on, let me just say, Christians do this all the time. Christians will rent out public facilities for Christian events. Now, the apples to apples comparison would be, well, do those events say Christians only? And the answer is, as far as I could tell, no, not really. And the reason is when Christians hold events like massive prayer rallies at a baseball stadium or renting out a public pool like this, the thing about it is they want to convert you. So of course they're not going to say Christians only. They hold worship events at baseball fields because they want non-Christians to show up and give themselves over to Jesus. So they very much are like, anyone's welcome. But like religious groups can set the ground rules. I saw an event this week that was a Christian event. They rented out public space and they wanted it for college students. So they said, attendees, you have to be between 18 and 25 if you want access to the event. Is that age discrimination? No, they're renting out the space. They could set their own rules. Anyway, so what happened? Well, Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, got involved because as soon as he saw this, he's like, I can make a culture war battle out of this. Here's a headline from the Christian Post. Religious discrimination. Greg Abbott threatens to pull state funding from Texas City over Islamic event. And let me show you what he actually did here. His office sent a letter to the mayor of Grand Prairie, the city where this is all taking place. And look at what they said here. This is to the mayor of Grand Prairie, Mayor Jensen. Look at that second paragraph. In public flyers, organizers describe the event as Muslim-only event. For Muslims only, closed to the public, Muslims only. In a tacit admission, organizers have already rushed to delete that language. Now flyers state that all are welcome, blah, blah, blah. The first hint that the broader public is not really welcome, however, is language explaining that any woman wishing to attend must wear burkinis. The organizer's website makes matters clearer, stating that the event is closed to the general public and at all times attendees must dress in accordance with Islamic values. If there were any doubt remaining, the website dispels it. The entire water park has been exclusively reserved for Muslims. Yeah, my dude, that's how renting spaces works. Again, if I'm renting a public banquet hall for my wedding, it's not a free-for-all. I get to play bouncer. I get to say it's exclusively for the people I like, and I don't know, the family members I don't. Right? You get to set the ground rules for who gets to come to your event. The discrimination part of this is that the city cannot discriminate against religious groups who want to rent the space. But once someone rents the space, they can decide who is invited to use the space while they are there. There's nothing illegal about what the Muslims did. I just want to be super clear about that. Nothing about this is illegal. But look at what Abbott's letter went on to say. Look at this paragraph at the top of your screen here. The event purports to be public-facing and discriminatory at the same time. All Muslims, but only Muslims, may attend. An event at a city-owned pool that was publicly and indiscriminately advertised as whites only would surely violate the Constitution. The same must be true here. So Abbott is comparing this event to a whites-only event. And he also added, by the way, on X/Twitter, let me show you this before I move on. He said the same thing, but he says that's religious discrimination. It's unconstitutional. And then look at this. The city must cancel the event and commit to never allowing something like it again by May 11th, or lose over $500,000 in state grants. Those are safety grants, by the way. So Greg Abbott said, hey, city, if you don't shut down these black and brown people celebrating Eid, we're going to take away over $500,000 in safety funding for your city. That's the threat that Greg Abbott was making. So all of this is it's just wild stuff to say in a state that is currently forcing a KJV translation of the Ten Commandments in public schools across the state. They're forcing that on everybody. And they're like, what? Muslims rented out space and they wanted it to themselves? No, Christians get to go wherever they want. And also, whites only spaces. We are doing this the same time that Republicans and their allies on the Supreme Court said you can suppress the power of black voters in southern states and other red states. You think they give a damn about like whites only spaces? Because that's now called the South again. But anyway, the facility that Grand Prairie runs is not discriminating. Christians can rent out the space if they want. Unfortunately, after all of this, I'm sorry to say, the threats did work. Follow-up from the Christian Post. Muslim event at public water park in Texas canceled after Governor Abbott threatens city funding. And if you look at this, a spokesperson for the city of Grand Prairie said Thursday, the city canceled the DFW Epic Eid celebration, ... after further review and in the best interest of the city of Grand Prairie, the June 1st Eid event at Epic Waters Indoor Water Park has been canceled. Which I get why the spokesperson did that. I'm sure the city's like, we don't want to pick a fight with the governor. We need that $530,000 for safety. So who do you want to fight against? The governor of your state who has power, or the Muslims in your community who probably don't? And I think the city calculated, fine, we'll just do what the governor wants because we can't fight this battle. The city did not admit any discrimination was taking place, right? In that statement. They just said it's in our best interest. And they actually gave a bizarre explanation to a local news station about why they were doing this. Look at this. I just want you to see how the city handled this. The city apparently said, where did it go? I lost it. Oh, I'll just tell you. The city apparently told the organizer of this event that we canceled it because you didn't make the proper payments to the city to rent this space. And the person organizing this event told the news team, I've been trying to pay them for several days now, but they won't take my money. So I think the city is lying about why they're saying no to her event. The lady who is running this is Dr. Amina Knight. She is the person, the person who organized this for the past couple of years. And I want to give her the benefit of the doubt here because she doesn't appear to be an activist of any kind. She's just someone who said, wouldn't it be nice if we could celebrate Eid as a community of Muslims? There are so many Muslims in our area, but we never get to really come together to do anything. And this seems like a nice way to celebrate it. And if we could do it in a way that is just for our community, wouldn't that be awesome? And at a water park that the kids are going to like, no less. She's not an activist. She's just someone who wanted to bring together her community. Look at what she said to the Here's what she said to the local Fox affiliate. Last year, the flyer said, come on out to celebrate the Eid. This will be a Muslim only event. I just want to clarify that because it's celebrating the Eid holiday. I mean, who celebrates the Eid holiday? Muslims, right? It was my way of letting the Muslim community know, hey, I've curated something just for you, which is like, oh, you're adorable. You didn't realize that conservatives would jump on this, which is so innocent of you. And I want to give you props for that. But in response to the cancellation, this is what she said. And some of this statement is really worth reading in full. I'm deeply disappointed that DFW Epic Eid has been canceled. What began as a private event for the Muslim community to celebrate Eid in a joyful and modest environment became something much bigger than I ever imagined. While I did receive hateful messages from people who misunderstood the event, yeah, they're called conservatives, I also believe this moment sparked important conversations about Muslims in America and how our community is viewed. My faith is not something to fear. Important to say, she went on, I was born here, I was raised here, I was educated here, I belong here. And despite the negativity, I still choose conversation over division. And last thing, just worth pointing out, on this 4th of July, I'll be partnering with brothers and sisters from other faith communities to host an interfaith event called the Great American Cookout. So she's now going to do an interfaith event, which is very nice. Nothing wrong with that. But what I took away from that is I don't think she's going to try to fight this in court. I don't think she's going to try and sue over religious discrimination, even though I really want her to, because what happened to her is deeply unfair. And I think atheists should care about this too, because this goes to the heart of Christian nationalism and the idea that everything's fine when conservative Christians do it, but if other religions or non-religious people try to do the same stuff, these same conservative Christians will try to shut it down. They're never okay if non-Christians of their specific type try to get away with something Christians do all the time. And let me just remind you, several years ago, in the state of Texas, in the state capital, you could rent out space to put up a holiday display, and there were always nativity scenes put up there. And so, again, like a decade ago, the Freedom from Religion Foundation said, oh, we want to put up a secular nativity scene. And they did. Greg Abbott had it taken down. Same reason. He's basically saying, oh, sure, it's a public forum, but not for you people. And in this case, the Freedom from Religion Foundation filed a lawsuit because they have the ability and the resources to do that. And it took like 8 or 9 years to get resolved, but FFRF won that lawsuit. And I think the state of Texas had to pay out like $250,000 in legal fees by the time all was said and done. Because you cannot have a public venue and then shut out one group for taking advantage of that space. And that's what the Muslims did in this situation too. The city was not denying anybody access to a government facility. A private group rented out a public space for a private celebration, the same thing that churches and youth groups and sports leagues and conservative groups do all the time. And the only reason this one is in the news is because they're Muslim. That's it. And by pretending that this was some kind of Jim Crow level segregation, which, Greg Abbott really cares about, Abbott and his allies manufactured outrage. They got the attention they wanted on the right, which is all that matters to them because it's not like they're ever really victims of anything. And the message to Muslims is clear, too. You can exist as long as Christians are comfortable. And the second you make us uncomfortable in any way, we will come after you. And I appreciate that a Knight in this case, she responded with grace, and she responded with an invitation to interfaith understanding, while Greg Abbott responded with threats and intimidation and demagoguery, because that is all he knows. That's what Republicans in Texas do. The moment a non-Christian group wants to do something Christians do all the time, if those people are still in charge, conservative Christians will always go on the attack when anyone tries to do what they do all the time. Okay, I will pause there. What questions we got here? Hammond is always right. How dare anyone disagree? I say this to my kids all the time. They never listen. If you bless a water park, does it all become holy water? It's a very good question. I've always wondered if you baptize someone at the top of a water slide, by the time you are like in the pool at the bottom, is that still holy water? Or does it like undo what happened at the top? I don't know. Is it like peeing in the pool where like you don't want to be in any part of it at the end of it? Or does it only affect that one little area? I don't know. Someone needs to do the physics of baptismal holy water. If people could have a Christian event at the water park with no issues, there's no reason they can't have a Muslim event there. That's what I'm saying. I cannot understand any argument that says the Muslim group here did anything wrong or illegal, or that the city did anything wrong by allowing them to rent the facility and institute their ground rules for who could be invited to their party. So is it unconstitutional that churches only welcome people of their own faith? I want to be clear, and I made this point earlier, and maybe you asked this before I said it. One of the things that this distinguishes Christian churches by and large is that they absolutely want non-Christians to attend their services because they want to convert you. The Muslims in this case, they don't give a shit if you convert or not. They wanted to hold a party for their people, for their community, and they should be allowed to do that. And again, when asked, do you have to be Muslim to attend? They were like, oh, is that what you took away from the flyer? Poor phrasing on our part, but let us clarify. Anyone is welcome to come as long as you understand we are here to celebrate a Muslim holiday and we have some rules in place to make sure all of our community members are comfortable. But they made it clear they're not stopping anyone from entering as long as you follow their rules, which makes sense. Texas still has a town called White Settlement. Really? Also, not surprised. Do you guys got a GeoCities page? Like me personally, our site? No? Does anyone have a GeoCities page today? I mean, I'm sure I do somewhere in the Ethernet in the background somewhere. I'm sure I made one at some point. So what are you going to talk about at the Nashville Nuns Convention at Montgomery Bell State Park in late July? I've been to the last two and had a good time. I've not registered yet. Yes. So this is an event. You could look it up. The Nashville Nuns Convention, NanoCon. Um, Yeah, it's taking place in late July. I haven't solidified what I'm talking about, but I may talk about. I really just want to talk about tradwives because I'm fascinated by all of it, but I don't know yet. Looks like it's going to be a really interesting event at a beautiful facility. I've never been there before, so I'm looking forward to it. But you should check it out, NanoCon. Go. I'm sure Den can find the website for it and post that link in the comments. But it looks like it'll be a really cool event. I'm really excited to go and meet a bunch of people from the area. But yeah, check it out. It looks like it's going to be awesome. You should go register. Okay, I'm jumping to another story. I just posted a link to NanoCon for anyone who's interested. It's in the YouTube comments section. And I think I am ready to go with the next story. Okay. All right, we got to talk about Greg Locke, the Christian hate preacher. I've talked about him before for various reasons. They're never anything great. I just want to open this segment by mentioning I am aware that Greg Locke had a personal tragedy take place in his immediate family over the past week. He lost his son. That is a horrific situation. I wish that on nobody. I wish his family all the best. And I'm really sorry to hear about that. And I'm only pointing that out to say, I still am going to criticize him for something else he did, but I am aware, and people should let him deal with the personal tragedy. That's all. I acknowledge that that happened. Okay, let's talk about something else he did recently that I do think people should talk about, and I'm not going to ignore it just because of what else he is dealing with at this time. So Greg Locke is this preacher who runs Global Vision Bible Church in Tennessee. And he did something very weird recently, which is that he apologized for something he said years ago that I was trying to get him to apologize for many years ago. He did not. But suddenly he is taking back what he said. Because the thing is, he lied many years ago. And only now he's decided to acknowledge it. So, and I'm going to play some clips for you in just a second. I will warn you, because it's Greg Locke preaching, it's very loud and it's absolutely insane, the stuff he says. And let me start you out with, here's some background. So it's 2021, December of 2021. At this point, if you didn't know much about Greg Locke, what you really need to know is that he was preaching for a while. He put his sermons up on YouTube. He would say outrageous things and he got attention that way and he liked it. And then when the pandemic was happening, he realized he could gain even more traction if he just pretended there was no pandemic happening. So he was like, at first, he opened up a church, like he decided to build an outdoor circus tent and hold services there because you couldn't really meet indoors. But then he decided it was even better to pretend there was no virus. So he actually instituted a rule in his church. You were not allowed to wear a mask if you went to his church in the middle of the pandemic. When vaccines were finally available, of course, he was a denier. CNN interviewed him at one point to do an interview about what the hell he was doing. And the reporter asked him point blank, like, what do you think a pandemic is? And he couldn't answer the question, but he was like, there's no pandemic. And the reporter's like, well, what is a pandemic? And he's like, but there's no pandemic. That's what it's like to talk to Greg Locke. So after all that happened, he just realized he could get louder and more outrageous, and it always worked to his advantage because conservatives love that type of shit. So it's December of 2021 now. He is now preaching in his big old circus tent. And one of the nights that he was preaching, he decided to make a shocking claim about the Christian pastor Joel Osteen, the megachurch pastor who rarely says anything offensive. He promotes the prosperity gospel. He writes books that are very much self-help-ish. He's very photogenic. And a lot of Christians don't like him because they think he's not really talking about the gospel so much. He's just promoting live your best life. Anyway, here's what Greg Locke said about Joel Osteen. Let me play this for you, and then we will discuss.
Some of your preaching heroes are going to hell. They've never been born again a day in their life. They are hirelings. They are crooks. They are conditioning people to think against what the Word of God teaches. And I'm telling you, they are going to drag them out of their pulpits, kicking and screaming in handcuffs. And you can tell Joel Osteen I said so, because he's one of them. He's a pedophile and a crook, and everybody knows it, and I don't care how mad you get. I'm telling you, you mark my word right. I'll step down as your pastor if it ain't true. I'm telling you right now. I'll stop preaching if what I'm telling you is not true. And you know why that dirty crook will not sue me? Because he knows I'm telling the truth.
Yeah, welcome to church. I don't know how anyone could voluntarily listen to that for like 2 hours. Like, buddy, it's like a Wednesday night. Calm the fuck down. But okay, you heard what he said about Joel Osteen. He made a very serious accusation against Osteen, which, by the way, obviously has no basis in reality. There was no evidence there. And then he said, if it's not true, I'm going to step down as your pastor. I will step down if it's not true. And I think Locke thought he could say that sort of thing because at the time, even though he was notorious in the worst sort of way, he is nobody compared to Joel Osteen, who has a massive megaphone and he's on your TV every week, right? So he thought he could get away with it. Joel Osteen's not even going to hear that sermon, right? So that's what he said in 2021, December of 2021. And I think the fact that nothing happened as a result of that sermon meant he could go even further. So in May of 2022, he decided to call out Kenneth Copeland, who, to be clear, is not a good guy. He's one of the wealthiest televangelists in the world. He's one of those guys who has like, he's what, like in his 90s now, but he still looks, he has the surgery. I don't know. I'm making that up. I shouldn't say that. But he looks like he's younger. He looks like he's never going to stop preaching. He has said he's going to live to 120 or something like that. But he decided to go after Kenneth Copeland. And here he is going after Copeland because now no one can stop Greg Locke from saying this stuff.
Kenneth Copeland is a heretic. You hear me? Kenneth Copeland is the #1 Christian heretic in America. He wouldn't know a Bible if it bit him in the butt in the middle of the road. Kenneth Copeland is a demon and he knows it. You know why Kenneth Copeland won't sue me? Because he knows I got the receipts. He's a false prophet. Kenneth Copeland should be under the jail. You would be shocked if you knew what's going on behind closed doors in these pastors' offices. By the way, I dare Kenneth Copeland to take me to court and sue me for what I'm about to say. He is a 33rd degree Mason. He is in the Masonic satanic cult.
I have no idea what he's doing at the end there. I also, if I'm being honest, I have no idea why someone being in a 33rd degree, I don't know what it means to be a 33rd degree Mason. Because what does that mean? If you're a 32nd degree Mason, we're cool? I don't know what that's supposed to be an accusation of exactly, but apparently it's very bad, according to Locke. But again, did you hear what he said? He said, Copeland's not going to sue me because he knows I got the receipts. I dare Copeland to sue me for saying that. And I know the Mason thing is a conspiracy theory. I'm just saying I haven't followed that particular brand of conspiracy theories. But yeah, that's what Greg Locke said in May of 2022. And listen, I know I'm repeating, I'm not a fan of Kenneth Copeland either. But the implication that he is doing something illegal behind closed doors and that whatever he's doing means he should be under the jail, that is based on no evidence whatsoever. I think he's a grifter. I think he takes money from poor Christians who can't really afford it, and he basically tells them he needs it for his ministry, and he really doesn't. But that's very different from what Locke is implying. So then, it's July of 2022. And this time, Locke, again, feeling invincible, he thinks he can go even further. And this may be the most damning stuff he says out of everything. I'm going to play this for you. I was debating, should I like bleep out everything? And I'm like, no, I will play for you the full segment of this sermon. And I will tell you also, all three of these segments that I just played for you, I'm about to play for you, this is back when I was listening to a lot of his sermons. My brain still hurts. My ears still hurt. But I clipped this stuff. I posted this on social media at the time. And I saw them getting recirculated this week for reasons I will explain in a second. And I am very much of the nature that, like, I don't care if you don't have to, I want you to use my material. If you have a podcast, YouTube channel, I love it when you use my articles as sources for what you want to talk about. All I ask is that you give me credit for it, because I'm the idiot who sits and watches this stuff. And when I saw this stuff getting recirculated, even though my watermark was like in the corner of all of these clips, I did not see anyone giving credit where it's due. I am a little mad about that. Just pointing that out. Anyway, let me play for you this third clip because he goes even further.
Full-blown demon-possessed Satan worshipers like Kenneth Copeland, the most powerful pastor in America. He's a demon and he's going to hell, and you tell him I said so. I'm about to kick his pulpit over and preach wide slam open tonight. That low-down, sorry sex trafficking rapist, I wish to God he would take me to court. I wish to God that demon would take me to court. I'll show the pictures I've got. You ever send another dime to that low-down, sorry pedophile? I pray God curses your finances. I'm sick of these demon-worshiping pastors like Joel Osteen. You say, oh my goodness, you mean to tell me that Joel Osteen, he's that way with women? No, I'm here to tell you Joel Osteen's that way with boys. By the way, you ever heard of a dead man switch? Well, just in case they come and try to suicide me, I got one of them. Let them chase me down. Huh? It'll all go on the internet. Every last drop of it. Tom Hanks, Oprah, and all them pedophiles. Okay.
Like, what did Tom Hanks and Oprah do to get dragged into all this? Well, Tom Hanks anyway. Oprah, you can blame her for Dr. Phil and Dr. Oz, but like Tom Hanks, come on now. He said a lot of stuff in there. A lot of very serious allegations. But the thing I want to point out here, he said, I wish that Copeland would take me to court. I will show the pictures I've got. Meaning he has pictures of proof of the things he is accusing these guys of. First, where'd you get these pictures from? Why are you holding on to them? If you have evidence that children are being harmed, why aren't you releasing that evidence immediately? Why are you sitting on it? This is the question that I wanted answered, and I'm not alone on this. But when those clips started circulating years ago, that's what people were wondering. If you are so confident that you have this proof, why are you sitting on it? Go share it with officials. And then Locke also said, have you ever heard of a dead man switch? In case anything ever happens to him, in case Joel Osteen and Kenneth Copeland send hitmen to go get Greg Locke, if anything happens to him, it'll all go on the internet, he said, every last drop of it. Well, you'll never believe this. Nothing ever happened to him. There was no indication that Copeland or Osteen ever knew these sermons were taking place. But more importantly, Locke never released those photos that he apparently had in his own private collection for whatever reason. Never bothered sharing it. Like, why? If you have this evidence, why are you allowing children to just keep being harmed? Either you don't care about the kids, or you are lying. I obviously thought he was lying, but like, what's he going to do when an atheist calls him out on it? Nothing. He just ignores it. So a couple of weeks ago, I made a video where I was talking. This is going to sound like a tangent. It's not. I made a video about a guy named Mike Winger. He is a Christian, a very conservative Christian YouTuber. We disagree. I'm on pretty much everything theologically. But the reason I talked about him a couple of weeks ago is because he made this long video calling out Bethel Church in California for basically lying to people about supernatural gifts from God. And I did appreciate that he was calling out his fellow Christians on what I would have called a grift. And good for him on doing that. Well, it turns out, I think Mike Winger was looking for other things to do. Like, who else should I go after? And people were telling him you should go after Greg Locke. And at one point, Mike Winger says on social media, he sees my clips from years ago, but he says, Locke said he had the evidence. He should have brought it forward. He should have brought it to the police, to the FBI. He should have also done something to protect victims. Yeah, buddy, I know. We've all been saying that for years now, but it does hit different when another conservative Christian, especially one with a massive audience like Mike Winger, makes the same point. And this is where it gets interesting because Greg Locke decided to respond to Mike Winger's comment there. And it'll help if I actually share this, wouldn't I? Let me try that again. Here we go. Here's what Greg Locke said. I owe you zero information about anything. You're so hungry for more stories, you'll just keep on going no matter what. Enjoy your life. Ride the fame. The rock will roll back upon you eventually. In other words, I'm not sharing the pictures that are currently in my possession, he says. And Mike Winger says, you owe me nothing. That's true. However, as a leader and protector, you owe it to the victims to come forward with evidence if you have it, or you owe it to those men to apologize if you were lying. Yes, also true. I happen to agree with that. And at this point, now Locke is like in it. And now he responds once again because he's like a debate me bro sort of dude. I challenge Mike Winger to a duel. No, what did he say? I challenge Mike Winger to a live sit down, like actually together in the same room. We could use both of our platforms to stream it, ... What about it, Mike? You've purposely tried to destroy lives, ministries, and reputations, including my own, with situations you know nothing about. You act cute and calm behind all of your heavily edited videos. Have a real conversation. Balls in your court. So debate me on this. Let them fight. I know. But Winger said, okay, I'll debate you as long as we focus on the accusations you made of Joel Osteen and Kenneth Copeland and Oprah and Tom Hanks. And then here's the kicker. After all of this, Mike Winger adds one more thing that I found hilarious. He posts this on social media. Look at this one. I reported it to the FBI already. Love it. So if the FBI didn't know that Greg Locke was in possession of pictures of children that apparently is evidence of people harming them, the FBI does now. Which, by the way, I just got to say, while I love that comment, it would mean so much more if the person in charge of the FBI wasn't Kash Patel. But I do appreciate the sentiment. He reported it to the FBI already. That means maybe, in theory, someone could be investigating this. He called Locke's bluff. It's amazing. So Locke stopped responding after that post right there. But a few days later, on May 4th, Locke finally issued a response because Mike Winger put out a video describing a lot of the stuff I just showed you and walking you through the accusations that were made and the fact that Locke in the past, 5 years now, has not released any of the evidence he claimed to have. So Locke finally responds. Let me pull this up here. It's one of those tweets that goes on forever. Seriously, this is the tweet. It's very long. But my response to Mike Winger's recent attack. In recent days, Mike Winger has publicly called me out regarding a video I posted 4 years ago addressing serious allegations against Kenneth Copeland and Joel Osteen. This situation has been public for years and could have been addressed by him at any time. Let's stop there for a second. My dude, they have been addressed. We've been calling you out on this for many years. It's not like no one paid attention and suddenly they are. It has only resurfaced now after I challenged his continual public exposures and interruptions with the body of Christ. I owe him and the public no further personal information or private meetings on this matter. Here's how we got here. And now Locke is going to try to weasel himself out of everything he just said. Let's go through this slowly, shall we? Several individuals approached my wife and me with grave concerns about these men and their ministries. Chief among them was a woman. Got to make clear it's a woman. You got to blame a woman for stuff. Who presented what she described as detailed timelines, photographs, and firsthand accounts of alleged criminal activity. Importantly, none of this material was ever placed in my personal possession, forwarded to me, or stored on any of my devices. It remained their story to tell. Let's just stop there for a second. So some rando just comes up to Locke and his wife and is like, I know those men are horrible, horrible people, and I have proof. And Locke is like, wait, stop. I don't need to see anything. Send me nothing. It's your story to tell. Let me yell about this over the course of like 6 months from my YouTube live streamed pulpit. He didn't bother looking into it. He didn't bother exploring to see, should I trust this woman? No, he's just like, what? You called them the worst accusations possible? That must be the truth. Let me run with it and spread it to the masses. That's a responsible guy right there. So he goes on to say, we simply viewed what they chose to show us in those moments and did not take ownership of it. What does that mean? You viewed what they chose to show you? What sort of movie nights do you guys have? So she showed you proof. What proof? What did you see, Greg? What are you and your family watching together with this random stranger? And let's suppose you watched a criminal act on video. Maybe this lady has it on her phone or something. Shouldn't your first response be, you should alert the police about this because holy crap, kids might be injured now and we got to make sure no one else gets injured? He did not say that, apparently. Believing these claims to be credible and urgent at the time, I spoke out boldly in that video. Buddy, there was nothing bold about it. You were just loud and male. That's what you were doing. What followed was 4 years of careful, prayerful investigation. Bullshit. First of all, there's no prayer involved in an investigation. There's investigating involved in an investigation. And Locke doesn't describe anything he did to investigate this. What does he say? As we pressed for verification and sought legal counsel, the stories began to shift and unravel. Key details changed, commitments were withdrawn, and it became clear that my voice had been leveraged because of my public platform and reputation for being fucking awesome. I was not being given truth. I was being used as an amplifier. You see, everybody, Greg Locke is truly the victim in all of this. Not the children. Him. But again, how could the stories begin to unravel if they showed you evidence, even if it wasn't in your possession? He makes it sound like she showed us the videos, but then her story began to shift. What story began to shift? The video was right there. What were you looking at, Greg? I have owned this publicly. No, he hasn't. He hasn't talked. He hasn't said a damn thing about any of this. On multiple occasions, I have stood before our church and repented for speaking where I should have first verified. That to me is a hilarious thing to say because, I mean, I know I'm an atheist, but the whole thing about being a pastor is your entire career is speaking about things you have not verified. That's kind of the job of a pastor. But no, you did not verify this. You just took a lie and ran with it. Privately, I have sought reconciliation with a number of the individuals and families involved. Oh, really? Have you? More on that in a second. 22 years. I don't care about Benny Hinn. After prayerful counsel with my spiritual advisors, I have decided it is not wise to sit down with Mike Winger, despite my earlier public challenge on X to do so. Their unanimous recommendation is rooted in the fruitlessness of further engagement on a matter that has already been thoroughly examined, repented of, and largely resolved in private. None of this was resolved. None of this was examined. None of this was repented of. Greg Locke has never apologized for any of the shit. And again, to say, like, my advisors have told me I shouldn't do this. Just take ownership. You're a coward. You don't want people to be reminded of what you said very confidently several years ago, because it's going to backfire. Because if those guys figure out what you said about them, they could absolutely file a lawsuit against you for what you said, because there is no proof and nothing would come out in discovery to back up what you are saying. So Locke is not in a good position here, and he's blaming an unnamed woman for telling him about this. Then he's blaming his unnamed advisors. He has no advisors. You think a guy like him listens to a team of advisors on what he ought to do? Or do you think he's like, I feel like doing something, I'm going to do it. Who's going to stop me? He doesn't have advisors. Anyway, then there's a bunch of bullshit and then something about grace. Who cares? So that's Greg Locke. That's what he is saying now. It's a lot of words for him to say, I made everything up because I'm a professional liar and the people who attend my church are even more gullible than I am. This guy who spreads conspiracy theories for a living is now arguing that he was just duped by another conspiracy theorist. None of these people give a damn about the evidence because critical thinking is not in their toolbox. That's why they belong to a church like his. So let's sum up where we're at now. If Locke knew he had been duped about Osteen and Copeland and the others, how come the apology was never as public as his accusations? Where's the tweet where he says, hey, Kenneth, hey, Joel, I lied about you. I'm sorry. Shouldn't have said those horrible things. Don't sue me. He hasn't done that. He's never done that to his congregation. Show me the clip of a sermon where he issued that public apology. It's not there. It's not there. Also, why did he go after Mike Winger for raising any of these points? Mike Winger's not the bad guy in this particular situation. Why not admit that those of us who shared these clips were right to call him out on his bullshit? I want my apology from Greg. Why did he say it was their story to tell, only to turn around and make it his story? That he had proof, that he knows what's going on behind closed doors. Why did he never demand to see more evidence before issuing these accusations? What the hell did his investigation involve? Does anyone seriously believe Greg Locke knows how to investigate anything when his whole vibe is anything I say is true because I thought it? I'm a white guy, so anything I believe must be true. And let's circle back to that thing he said in that earlier video. He said, he said, I will step down as your pastor if it ain't true. I'll stop preaching if what I'm telling you is not true. Guess what? It wasn't true. So why is Locke still running his church? Why hasn't he issued his formal resignation? The Christian website, the Roy's Report, which does a lot of actual investigations, I loved this passage that they posted in their article. The Roy's Report emailed the offices of Osteen, Copeland, Oprah, and the publicist for Hanks about the accusations. Locke's retraction, asking whether Locke personally apologized to them because he said he did. None immediately responded. Love it. They reached out to those guys. So if they didn't know about the accusations before, they sure as hell know about them now. Anyway, all of this shows you why Locke cannot be trusted as an honest broker. He has, just to give you, because I have a long history with this guy, he has said children with autism suffer from demon possession. He blamed the United Nations for the Israeli government's genocide in Palestine. He called for more murder in the Gaza Strip. He is a book burner. He is an anti-vaxxer. He's a conspiracy theorist who thinks the moon landing was fake. He said anonymous witches watch him live streaming as they, quote, sit in front of a cauldron and cast spells on him. He thinks public schools are on hiring sprees for witches. He hates owls, which I know is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just weird, but it is a thing about him. And also more recently, he's been accused of spiritual and financial mismanagement. Like his entire career has been built on lies and exaggerations and promoting bullshit. And I know that doesn't make him that different from some of the people he's calling out, but Locke's shtick is that he's always better than the rest of them. He can always call them out. He's the one with the courage to call out other Christians. And the second a more well-known Christian online called him out for that, what did Locke do? He backed away. He's like, I didn't do anything wrong. I don't have the proof. So now the question is, does anyone in his congregation give a damn? Are they going to walk out? Because like this guy's admitting he's lying for a living. Do they have enough self-respect to leave the circus tent? Or are they just going to pretend that all the people criticizing Greg Locke are inherently demonic? Because that's definitely the thing Greg Locke wants them to believe. Whew. Oh, this video is going to be demonetized fast, isn't it? Anyway, what questions we got here? Where is this dipshit from? Tennessee, just outside of Nashville. You know, when I go to NanoCon this year, maybe I'll try to make a detour and see if he wants to hang out. Can I tell you, I've tried to do that before. He wasn't in town that weekend. I think everything he says is a confession. You know, as tempted as I am to be like, haha, of course it is. I will say, like, I don't like Locke. I think his beliefs are harmful. And yet I would not make that accusation about him because that's a very serious thing to make an accusation about. Certainly without proof. And yet he's like, what the hell? I can say whatever I want. I don't get that in anybody. And Jesus said you should judge others. I'm pretty sure that's that's quoting Jesus verbatim. I'm sure that was somewhere during the Sermon on the Mount. Surprised they threaten any type of lawsuit. Depositions can and do turn over all kinds of rocks. I would love to see Copeland or Osteen go after him for this. It would be funny. The worst part about all of this, Locke and the like, are just symptoms of a much larger epidemic of stupid. Is it just stupidity, though? Because, like, a lot of people believe in a lot of stupid things, including, by the way, atheists. This is not just stupidity. It's like very much I'm confident, I'm a man. If I speak loudly as if I know what I'm talking about, there is an audience out there that will fall for it. Locke does it with Christian audiences. Joe Rogan does it with like disaffected young men. Pick your, white look maxing influencer. They all know that if you just speak confidently, you can never say anything wrong. Just say it with authority. There will be people who want to follow you because most people don't have that kind of confidence, and they shouldn't. They should have some nuance and some humility, and they don't. And I think Locke just taps into that for a Christian audience. Honest question. Are Christians flat earthers? No. I mean, I'm sure there are some who are really, really dumb in that sense, but even creationists are not necessarily flat earthers. So there are just some people who buy it for reasons I cannot explain. All right, jump into another story. Oh, we're going to talk about this one in a second. Skip this one. Give me one moment. This is almost unloading. Okay. Let's talk about Robert Jeffress. He is the Southern Baptist, MAGA loving pastor, also from Texas, because of course he's from Texas. He was on one of those Sunday morning talk shows last weekend, and he made a ridiculous argument that I just felt was worth discussing. The host, this was on Fox News, the host was basically talking about how Marco Rubio made a trip to the Vatican to meet with Pope Leo the 14th, and they were talking about the war of words that has been happening between Trump and the Pope, because the Pope has this weird idea that war is bad and maybe we shouldn't kill people. And Donald Trump is Donald Trump. And so Trump has been saying just really horrible things about the Pope in general. He's been trashing Pope Leo because, Pope Leo clearly doesn't understand how smart Trump is. And Jeffress was on Fox News to defend, like, what's going on? What's Trump doing? And what Jeffress said is that he commended the Trump administration for meeting with the Pope and trying to work with the Pope. And Jeffress said the Pope is just wrong when it comes to Iran, which is weird because, again, there shouldn't be a war in Iran. Trump just chose to do that for no good reason whatsoever. Like the Strait of Hormuz was open before he got involved. The Obama nuclear weapons agreement with Iran was actually doing a pretty good job of preventing Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, and Trump just rescinded it because it was Obama who put it together. So we shouldn't be in Iran. It was a dumb thing for Trump to do. But Jeffress cannot admit that. So he's like, well, clearly the Pope doesn't get it. But the thing I want to point out, Jeffress said in the Bible, he said the Bible says the role of the church is to point people to faith in Jesus Christ. The role of government is to protect citizens from evildoers, and that is something that is said in Romans 13. And he also said, like, so he's basically saying Trump had to go after Iran because Benjamin getting a nuclear weapon, and we had talking points right there. But then he said this. I'm going to play a very short clip. This is what he said that had people talking more than anything else.
And the great irony is it looks like President Trump has a better understanding of what the Bible teaches about the role of government than the Pope has. And I'm glad the president hasn't backed down at all.
Trump has a better understanding of what the Bible teaches about the government, the role regarding Iran now, as Iran is always 2 weeks away from a new wrong. Like church interpretation of that, but also Romans 13, the same verse Robert Jeffress better than the Pope as thyself. I don't know what happened there. I have been raptured. We will fix that. Give me 1 second here to fix up stuff. That was weird. I don't even know what happened there. Okay. I don't know where I left off. Dan, can you tell me where I left off when I got raptured? This is a clone. Anyway, I'll figure it out. Let me back up for just a second then. The idea that Trump apparently understands the Bible's the role of government better than the Pope is laughable, because the only thing Trump knows about the Bible is that if you wave it in front of white evangelicals, they will let you get away with anything, from financial corruption to overthrowing democracy to alleged stuff that happened on an unnamed island. And it's not like Pope Leo was even chiming in on the role of government. Let me show you what the Pope said that made Trump so mad. This is like his Easter Sunday commentary. Let those who have weapons lay them down. Let those who have the power to unleash wars choose peace. Not a peace imposed by force, but through dialogue. We cannot continue to be indifferent, and we cannot resign ourselves to evil. That's the thing that made Trump mad to begin with. And then he trashes the Pope on social media after that. The Pope also said at the time, we need to abandon every desire for conflict, domination, and power before the world becomes indifferent to the deaths of thousands of people and the hatred and division that conflicts sow. And after Trump lashed out against him and reporters asked the Pope, what do you say about that? Guess what the Pope said next time around? And this is shortly after Easter. Here's what the Pope said then. I will not enter into debate. The things that I say are certainly not meant as attacks on anyone. The message of the gospel is very clear. Blessed are the peacemakers. I will not shy away from announcing the message of the gospel and inviting all people to look for ways of building bridges of peace and reconciliation and looking for ways to avoid war anytime that's possible. And then he added, I'm not afraid of the Trump administration or of speaking out loudly about the message of the gospel, which is what the church works for. Incredible. Those were the supposedly controversial remarks that Jeffress insisted showed a lack of understanding of what the government should be doing. That actually tells you a lot more about Jeffress's own views than anything else, because this guy cherry picks Bible verses to affirm conservative cruelty, but he will ignore everything to the contrary. That's Robert Jeffress for you. And I know that because, do you remember when Trump got inaugurated for the second time, early 2025, what happened on the day of his inauguration? Trump and Vance, they attended a church service at the Episcopal Diocese of Washington. And Marianne Buddy, the bishop of that church, she urged them to use their powers for good. Be nice. And what did Jeffress say at the time? He said that Buddy insulted rather than encouraged our great president. So Robert Jeffress will say anything to defend Trump, even when other Christian leaders are basically saying, hey, have you read this book? Because, like, we did, and it's not whatever the hell you're doing. And Jeffress doesn't care. Jeffress, who, by the way, doesn't give a damn about the Bible, his whole church, and you know this if you watch his sermons, it's all about promoting Christian nationalism, false revisionist Christian history, and things like that. Jeffress wants to credit Trump for knowing the Bible better than the Pope, at least in terms of the government. But Trump is the 2 Corinthians guy. He's the guy who said in an interview he doesn't need forgiveness, so he doesn't ask God for forgiveness. He's the guy who couldn't name his favorite Bible verse. He's the guy who was asked, do you prefer the Old Testament or the New Testament? Answer, New Testament, Jesus stuff. And Trump is like, I like them both. He's the guy who held up a Bible in front of a church after his team drove away peaceful protesters with tear gas. Trump is the guy who sells a tacky Bible with sticky pages by plastering his name on it. He's the guy who posts AI slop depicting himself as Jesus or Dr. Jesus. And more recently, he's the guy who unveiled a golden statue of himself, despite the Bible having a famous story about not worshiping a golden calf. That's the guy Jeffress is saying knows the Bible better than the Pope. I've said this before, but there's not a single white evangelical church in America that would ever allow Donald Trump to be their pastor if they wanted to be taken seriously. And yet more than half of Republican voters, a good chunk of whom would describe themselves as conservative Christians, seriously believe Trump is a man of faith. Meanwhile, just FYI, Pope Leo got his Master of Divinity from Catholic Theological Union in Chicago. He got his doctorate in canon law from the Pontifical University of St. Thomas Aquinas in Rome. He might know a little something about the Bible. Before I finish the story, I just want to show you one last thing that made me laugh. There was a poll recently done by The Economist and YouGov, and they pointed out that President Trump and Vice President Vance have criticized Pope Leo for comments he made about the war in Iran. Who do you agree with more about the war? And you could see, look at the top of this poll, the very top line there. 48% of American adults side with Pope Leo. Only 28% side with Trump and Vance. It's a very unpopular war. But I want to show you this right here. Among atheists and agnostics, I will remove myself from your screen so you could see this. Among atheists and agnostics, 80% of us agree with Pope Leo. Only 10% agree with Trump and Vance. Meanwhile, look at Roman Catholics here. Only 42% agree with the Pope. 31% agree with Trump and Vance. Atheists and agnostics are like twice as likely to be on the Pope's side on this very important issue than Catholics themselves. Holy crap. Like, do you know how awful someone has to be for the Pope to be the voice of moral authority? And who knew that in the national divorce, atheists get the Vatican? I don't know. I guess we shouldn't be surprised that MAGA Christians would choose Trump over the Bible. Like, if they ever met the brown-skinned Palestinian Jesus, they would try to deport him, not worship him. But that is Christian nationalism for you. All of these guys who surround Trump will go out of their way to trash every Christian leader who says, hey, Trump, you're not doing Christianity right. They will trash all those people and defend Trump no matter what he does, because that's what matters to them. It's not the gospel. It's not the Bible. It's not anything Jesus said. It's whatever Trump says. That's what their religion is. All right. I will stop there with this story. What questions we got here? Oh, thanks for that donation. Bibi was pitching a regime change in Iran to every president for decades. Yes, he did. And yes, there are clips of that. Trump was just the only one dumb enough to fall for it. That's the reason. Absolutely. I mean, Trump and every Republican and also John Fetterman for whatever reason. But yeah, that's accurate. Trump's all, why you calling me evil? And the reporter was like, so you think he was talking about you? That was a great thing. Who was that? Nora O'Donnell talking about accusations made. I forgot who was making the accusations, but Trump is like, why are you talking about me? And she's like, why do you think they're talking about you? It was great. It was great. Good follow-up question. I love it when reporters ask him follow-up questions. All right, jump into another story. All right, I think I'm good after this. All right, let's talk about Joni Lamb. I don't know if her name is familiar to everybody, but she is a televangelist who's been around for a while. She was the co-founder of Daystar Television Network, a big Christian ministry, lots of TV shows. She recently died, and she died really young. She was only 65 years old, and it was due to serious health matters. I don't know exactly what they all were. Here's the headline from Religion News Service. Joni Lamb, Daystar TV Ministry co-founder, dies at 65. Apparently she had back issues, but they said she died of serious health matters, whatever they are. I want to talk about this only because I feel like she's going to be forgotten pretty quickly, and so I'll run out of time to talk about this. Let's talk about her legacy, because it's disastrous, and she unleashed a lot of chaos on a lot of people, and she harmed a lot of people, and I think you need to point this out while we can, right? So the big thing you need to know about her, besides the fact that she owned this Christian ministry, is the last time I talked about her was in 2024, because it was big news. This was the headline in the Roy's Report, which is a Christian media outlet. Former Daystar executive and wife accused Joni Lamb of covering up daughter's sexual abuse. And this was a bombshell of a story because it wasn't just a random staffer who was saying this. Joni's own son, Jonathan, was the one saying, hey, mom, my daughter is getting harmed by someone who works for our family business. So Jonathan and his wife, Susie, said that some guy, they named him Pete. I don't know if that was a pseudonym or his real name, but Pete had abused their girl. And according to their allegations, the ministry, including Joni, his mother, had gone to great lengths to cover it up. And what they said in 2024 is that Joni and Marcus Lamb, her husband, her co-founder of Daystar, they refused to take any action against this staffer. He was also a relative. So like, it's all in the family here, but they didn't do anything about it. They were more interested, I think, in protecting the ministry from bad publicity than kicking out one of their own, no matter how serious the allegation was, and no matter the fact that it was coming from their own son. And they told Jonathan and Susie not to talk to the police, and that the incident wasn't that big of a deal. And then in true conservative Christian fashion, this is really disturbing, but I feel like you got to hear this. Look at who Joni blamed for this whole situation. Again, this is from the Roy's Report. Susie, the wife of Jonathan, Susie added that when she strongly objected, saying that didn't explain why Pete was in the room with her daughter, Joni blamed the couple's daughter, saying she was the one who took her clothes off. The daughter is like a little child. At this, Susie said she began screaming at her mother-in-law, but Joni was adamant and reiterated her claim several times over the next 24 hours. So Joni Lamb was like, "Oh, son, what's going on? Oh, your daughter, my granddaughter, is being harmed by a member of the family? Well, what was she doing to seduce him?" That's what Joni was saying. And it didn't stop there. Apparently, after that blow up, the family business is still intact. They're all trying to deal with this internally. And I guess they had a ministry retreat at some big beach house, because of course it's a beach house. So they had a big retreat with the whole family slash staff. And Jonathan and Susie were like, "Hey, kids, maybe don't sleep in your own room somewhere else in this beach mansion. Why don't you stay close to us so we can keep an eye on you and make sure you're safe?" Which, I mean, okay, yeah, I guess that's the least you could do there. But guess what happened when they said, "Hey, kids, stay close to us"? Guess what Joni did? She got really mad at Jonathan and Susie. That night, when Susie insisted their kids sleep in the room next to them instead of upstairs, Joni confronted her, saying, "Look at what you're doing to this family. What about Pete's wife and Pete? What about their feelings? Why won't someone think of the alleged predators? That's what we do in this ministry." Holy crap, that's just an insane thing to say to your son. Joni followed that up by announcing to the family that God spoke to her and told her that Pete was innocent. So everyone needs to basically shut the hell up. I will also say, though, this was all reported to local law enforcement, and the police department in Texas, they did investigate the matter, but about a year later, they shut down that investigation because they said there was insufficient evidence to file any charges against Pete. So nothing ever came of that. Doesn't mean the accusations were untrue. It's just that there was nothing they could work off of to file charges. Interestingly enough, Jonathan also pointed out, this is like months after all of this went down, he was demoted from his job in the family business because he refused to sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. And then he was fired because he wouldn't address the deficiencies in his judgment and performance. What were those deficiencies? No one knows, including Jonathan. So his mom fired him from the family business not long after all of this became public. So anyway, all of this was shocking, not just because it's internal family succession like drama. It's that as recently as 2021, Jonathan was supposed to take over this ministry. After his dad died, succession was supposed to fall to him. But after all this shit went down, he was kicked out of the family lineup. His father then announced a new succession plan that said, "When I die, the control of the ministry goes to Joni, my wife, and not to my eldest son." Also, interestingly enough, when Marcus Lamb did die, by the way, I think in 2021, and Marcus Lamb died of COVID, which is funny's the wrong word. I don't take delight in it, but it's a little ironic because Marcus Lamb was one of the people spreading misinformation about COVID, and he died of COVID. But this is another thing. In 2023, Joni, she got remarried. Fine, you're allowed to get remarried. And Jonathan said at the time, because he handled finances, that his mom paid $100,000 for the honeymoon using ministry money. Joni Lamb denied this, but Jonathan had the paperwork to back it up. That wasn't great. So this is Joni Lamb for you. And one last thing to show you. Last week, when Joni Lamb was dying, no one told Jonathan. No one told her son that she was on her deathbed. In fact, Susie, Jonathan's wife, she said this on social media. Thank you to someone who told her about what was happening. Thank you. We weren't informed of anything. We were down the road, but we're not given a call to say goodbye. We forgive them. Thank you for praying for Jonathan. The family business, the family ministry did not even tell her son, hey, your mom is dying. Whatever happened between you in the past, maybe you should come and say goodbye because she won't be around much longer. They didn't even have the courtesy to do that. So, hashtag family values right there. I said earlier, the reason I wanted to talk about Joni Lamb is not just because she was a horrible person, as you could see, but they also harmed people outside of their family. Daystar Television was one of the worst anti-vax media outlets during the pandemic. This is an article from Media Matters from 2021. Again, just after the vaccine was available. Anti-vaccine ministry uses Facebook to promote dangerous COVID-19 and vaccine falsehoods to millions of followers. That's Joni and Marcus Lamb right there. Their network aired show after show telling people not to get vaccinated. Right Wing Watch pointed out, I think at one point, there were over 80 episodes you could live stream on their website spreading misinformation about the virus and about the vaccine. And Marcus himself told the audience that they had alternatives to vaccine, including ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, which are obviously not proven remedies for anything like COVID. Lamb also sued the Biden administration, claiming that vaccine mandates were a sin against God's holy word. That lawsuit was filed shortly before Marcus Lamb was diagnosed with COVID and then lost his life to COVID. He died of a virus that the ministry routinely downplayed and whose cure he rejected. One more thing about this place, about Daystar Ministry under Joni Lamb. Here's a headline from 2020. Daystar Television received a sizable PPP loan. What they purchased would blow your mind. They got about $4 million of taxpayer money to pay their staff that couldn't go to work because of COVID mandates, which was fine, good. I like that the government was urging people to stay home, but they had to get paid. They got those loans, and nonprofits were also allowed to get that money, which meant a lot of Christian ministries were able to get taxpayer money despite not paying into the system. But Daystar got about $4 million. What did they buy shortly after receiving that loan? A multi-million-dollar private jet. Inside Edition's Lisa Guerrero was the reporter who broadcast that information. Kudos to her. And they said they needed the jet for ministry business, but according to their Instagram pages, they were going on vacation because they were broadcasting that on social media. Working vacations because golfing is part of Christian ministry. And after that report came out on Inside Edition, the church said, we're paying back the $3.9 million. What else do you need to know about Joni Lamb? She did not like the gays. She said in 2012 that she knew thousands of people who had, quote, come out of homosexuality, which is not how that works. She said being gay was ungodly. She said God would not bless people who were, quote, operating within the realm of homosexuality. In 2012, she said America was a Christian society, for a predecessor to Christian nationalism. In 2020, she defended Donald Trump as a Christian because she insisted, quote, there's no way that he would go through what he has gone through to fight for these things that are important to us had he not had some kind of encounter with the Lord. So she urged Christians to vote for Donald Trump because God has his hand on Trump. But that's what this family is known for. They used Christianity to enrich themselves. They knew fighting culture war battles and pretending to be persecuted was an easy path to Christian wealth. They never gave a damn who got hurt in the process, even when it was Joni's own granddaughter, allegedly. And they never let family drama get in the way of their power. So Marcus Lamb died years ago from COVID. Joni Lamb is now dead because of health issues. I don't know. It's not a heart attack because she didn't have one of those. Who takes over Daystar now? I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's not Jonathan, apparently. But I wanted to say all that before people just forget about Joni Lamb and who she was. Okay, I will stop there. Any questions here? So what Hemant is saying is that she's not harming the world anymore. I mean, until Daystar Ministries' website goes down, I'm still blaming her for what they're putting out. But yes, your point is taken. She is not harming the world anymore. Deflecting blame, the way of the church. Certainly, yes, a lot of ministries, a lot of preachers operate with that mentality. My question is, why would Jonathan want to work with his mother? Why would they ever allow their child around her again? I mean, I can't speak for him personally, but man, people will do weird things when it's a family business, when it's your family itself. I mean, how many people do we all know who stick with their family? Blood is thicker than water, even when their family members do some really horrible stuff, maybe indefensible stuff. I guess I can kind of empathize with the idea that my mom doesn't get it, but I got to support her because what the ministry is doing is more important. So maybe I got to help my mom through this. She has to understand the danger. So he's not just going to walk away. Maybe she just doesn't get it. I mean, listen, I love my mom. My mom is still around. We disagree about a lot of stuff, but it's not like I'm going to walk away because she's wrong about stuff. It's let me try to make it make sense, even though that becomes a clash sometimes. I mean, we all have people like that in our family, right? As for why would they allow their child around her again, I think she's the grandmother of this child. You don't want her cut out of her life. But also, when you are around her, maybe we got to take some precautions because we know what she's surrounding herself with in this ministry. What a dumpster fire of a family that wants to tell us all who can be a family. Well put. Thank you for that. Yeah. All right, jumping to another story here. All right. You may have seen this one in the news recently, but it just happened like a day ago. Got to talk about the U.S. Department of Agriculture and its secretary, Brooke Rollins. She is one of the Trump cabinet members. And this is Brooke Rollins right here. Very excited about something. But she is currently being sued because she allegedly used her position and the department to illegally promote Christianity. And I know that doesn't strike anybody as surprising if you've seen, Pete Hegseth does that every day. But this is a very interesting lawsuit that is worth talking about here because the lawsuit says she is actively and regularly proselytizing in her work emails. Quote, promoting her own preferred brand of Christian beliefs and theology to the captive audience of employees that reports to her. Basically, she acts like her religion is the default religion for the entire agency. And they got a lot of examples in this lawsuit. For example, they mentioned, let me see if I could pull this up here. In this lawsuit, these are 7 employees of the USDA who are filing this lawsuit, as well as a union that represents federal workers and has, I think, 19,000 members who work in the Department of Agriculture. So in this lawsuit, look at this. Secretary Rollins sent from her official email account a message celebrating Independence Day to email lists containing all USDA employees. At the conclusion of her email, Secretary Rollins expressed, May God continue to protect the United States of America, and may his favor shine over all her land. Okay, I mean, it's not the worst thing I've ever seen. It's wrong, but it's not the worst thing. But what else is there? Then there was Thanksgiving. She said in a Thanksgiving email to all employees that the first Thanksgiving in 1621, she credited gratitude towards a loving God in bringing together two peoples despite their differences, which I don't think is historically accurate, but weird. Why are you emailing the entire office of thousands and thousands of employees trying to teach them about the first Thanksgiving? Just be like, go home and eat and be with your family. That's all you need to say. But then it got seriously worse, because then she turned it up a notch. She escalated her religious sermonizing in a Christmas message. I'm actually going to play you a bit of her Christmas message here, because she put out a video that was sent out to like the entire agency. And here is just a sampling of this video. It's very short.
The spirit of generosity flows from the very first Christmas, when God gave us the greatest gift possible, the gift of his Son and our Savior, Jesus Christ, who came to free us from our sins and open the door to eternal life.
Again, why is the secretary telling us what a pastor should be saying during a Christmas church service? That makes no sense. But that is what she did just before Christmas. And then the kicker of all of this is last month on Easter, she decided to send out another email to the entire agency. And this is what the email looked like. This is the Easter email for all employees. This is in the lawsuit. Christ is risen. Look at the pastel colors of the tomb of Jesus that he escaped somehow by moving a boulder from the inside, which is a thing that happens. But anyway, Team USDA. Happy Easter. He is risen indeed. Today, look at the pronouns. Look at the way she's writing this. Today, we celebrate the greatest story ever told, the foundation of our faith and the abiding hope of all mankind. From the foot of the cross on Good Friday to the stone rolled away from the now empty tomb, sin has been destroyed. Jesus has been raised from the dead, and God has granted each of us victory and new life. And where there is life, risen life, there is hope. We're going to keep going. No matter the very real trials and hardships we face, fear and sin and death do not get the last word, because on Easter morning, hell took a body and discovered God. It took earth and encountered heaven. It took what it saw and was overcome by what it did not see. It's telling. They always got to stick Nazi in there. She works for this government. Of course she did. Now that is reason to rejoice. Oh my God. Like, all you need to say is go home at spring break. I don't need a sermon. Why is she sending a sermon to the entire agency? There are Jewish people who work for them. There are Muslims. There are atheists. There's a Buddhist who filed this lawsuit, one of the employees. Like, why at this point? This is not a signing off like #blessed or something. You're not just sticking a Bible verse at the very end of an email, which would be bad, but it's not this. This is just a sermon that she is sending to people at this point. And that was the reason they decided to file this lawsuit. By the way, that same day she sent out that email, this is what she posted on her official social media account. Again, look at this is not her personal account. This is Secretary Rollins. Christ is risen. He's risen indeed. Today we celebrate the glorious fulfillment of God's promise. His son, Jesus, was crucified, died, and was buried. And on the third day, he rose again, blah, blah, blah. Death has been defeated. Hope has been restored. Christ is king. By the way, Christ is king is a phrase that has been hijacked by people on the far right. Don't know if that was intentional or not. But again, this is on her official secretary social media. She doesn't do this for Ramadan. She doesn't do this for Hanukkah. She does it for Christianity, and that's it. You expect a pastor to lie like this, not a government agency head. Like, her mythology does not speak for the department. But Rollins has repeatedly acted like her personal religion represents everybody who works under her. That, according to the lawsuit, this is worth pointing out here. Look at what they say early on. At the top, Secretary Rollins' practice and policy of subjecting agency employees to proselytizing messages conveys the expectation that USDA employees share in the secretary's religious beliefs, even when doing so would betray an employee's own beliefs. It is exactly the sort of government-sponsored religious coercion, religious sermonizing, and denominational preference that the Establishment Clause prohibits. Like, yeah, no kidding. And when this complaint was filed, guess what her spokesperson told CNN and pretty much everyone else? Here's their response to all this. A USDA spokesperson told CNN in a statement, "The secretary is within her rights to send a message to employees and the public on the Easter holiday, just like secretaries of agriculture and presidents have in the past." Yeah, she can send a message to everybody. She could say Happy Easter. That is okay. That's not what she's doing, and that's not what she's being accused of. They're not mad because she said Happy Easter. They're mad because she's using her position to repeatedly make it clear that the Department of Agriculture is a Christian department. And like, no, secretaries of agriculture in the past did not do the thing she is doing now. Presidents in the past did not do the thing she is doing now. And if they did, it's not okay when they do it either. Right? But they pointed out in this lawsuit, the reason we're filing this lawsuit now is because she is not going to stop doing this unless a court makes her. Because they have tried raising their concerns to their higher ups, and it's not working. And they said there's a pattern here. Look at what she's been doing. This is from September of last year. This is what she posted on social media. Yeah, look at this one. No matter the season, God's plan is greater than our own. Wishing all a blessed Sunday filled with peace, rest, and hope for the days ahead. Why did she post that? No reason. It's just a day that ends in Y. That was the reason for that post. Here's another one. Again, just celebrating the fact that it's a Sunday. Wishing a blessed Sunday to all. And you could see in that image, you got some farm equipment and a Bible verse. Why a Bible verse? No reason, just because that's what she does. There's one more I got to show you here. On the National Day of Prayer, this is what she posted. Today, on National Day of Prayer, we unite as one nation under God. We unite as one nation under God, blah, blah, blah. Our country's foundation is built on faith, and it's through prayer that we find blah, 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 bunch of crap. I'm grateful for the opportunity to serve alongside a cabinet that prioritizes Bible study and prayer, seeking God's guidance for our farmers who are being bankrupted by this administration, families and future of this great land. Like, I don't want a cabinet that does Bible study. I want a cabinet with competent people who know how to run agencies, and she is not that. So that's what the lawsuit is saying. She's not going to stop doing this unless a court makes her. And even then, I know it's an open question as to whether anyone will listen to a judge. But the 7 plaintiffs say in the lawsuit they felt pressured to agree with Rollins on matters of faith, and that refusing to go along with her could lead to negative consequences. They said that in the lawsuit. Look at what this thing says. This is like early on in the lawsuit. Look at line 11. They feel excluded and unwelcome, and they fear the negative consequences of not sharing the secretary's religion or expressing their own different beliefs in the workplace. That's the reason. Now, none of the plaintiffs have suffered consequences yet. It's not like they've been fired for being Jewish or Buddhist or an atheist or anything like that. But legally speaking, Christians have won a lot of legal battles, especially in recent years, arguing that they might be harmed in the future for practicing their faith. and this, like, refusing to make a wedding website for same-sex couples, even if no same-sex couples had asked someone to make a wedding website for them. And the Supreme Court has said, can't let that happen. We're going to rule in favor of the Christians. So under that logic, they're saying, we feel like we're being suppressed. So we got to file this lawsuit. And the plaintiffs include religious people and openly non-religious people who say they cannot be open about their faith because of what Rollins is doing. One of them said she asked to be removed from the email list so she wouldn't get these types of emails from Rollins. And her superior said, you can't do that. You can't not be on the email list. And that if you ask me to ask my higher up, it might, quote, create trouble for you. So they're asking the federal court to step in, declare that what she's doing violates the Establishment Clause and has to stop. So this lawsuit, again, 7 plaintiffs and the Union for Federal Employees. It's being pushed by Americans United for Separation of Church and State and a group called Democracy Forward and a private law firm called Brian Schwartz Law. Like in a sane world, this would be a straightforward case. But the Trump administration and its allies in the courts have repeatedly allowed Christians to basically get away with doing anything that other religious people or explicitly non-religious people would never be allowed to do. Like no Muslim secretary of anything would ever be allowed to get away with sending a similar email about Ramadan. But when it's Christianity, of course. I want to show you one last thing here, which is when all the media outlets asked the USDA to comment on this lawsuit, they all got the same response. This is ABC News. But look at this. In response to the lawsuit, a USDA spokesperson said in a statement, while we do not comment on pending litigation, we'll keep the plaintiffs in our prayers during this process.
19-year-old specialist Maria Simone Collington of
Like, do you
Florida
want me to roll my
disappeared
eyes or
earlier this
punch the
month during a training
Like,
exercise. Officials say she and
know what
another
they're
soldier,
doing.
First Lieutenant Kendrick Lamont Key
They're
Jr.,
still shoving
fell from a
Christianity
cliff
even
during
in
an off-duty
response
hike near Morocco's
this
Atlantic
lawsuit.
coast. The Army says Moroccan forces transported
One irony in all this
Collington's
is that
remains
the
to a
Department of
military
Agriculture,
hospital after an
more
extensive
than other
multinational
departments,
search.
is an
The
agency that
circumstances
should
surrounding
care
the incident
about
remain under
science and
investigation.
facts,
A controversial
not
live
prayer and
streamer known as
mythology.
Chud the Builder is in
Farmers are
custody
not
after a
doing rain
shooting outside
dances for
a
the
Tennessee
crops.
courthouse.
They need
Chud, whose
support
real
from the
name is
government, or
Dalton
they need to
Etherly,
do
was
work that
involved
relies
in a
on science.
confrontation Wednesday outside
In
the
case you're
Montgomery
wondering who
County
the hell is
courthouse
Brooke
that
Rollins, because
escalated into
I asked
gunfire.
myself that question too.
Investigators say both
Before she
Etherly
was
and
agriculture secretary, she worked for former Texas Governor Rick Perry. She led a couple of right-wing think tanks, which is a paradoxical statement, if ever I've heard one. She is pretty much every character in The Hunting Wives all rolled into one. She's been under fire. One of the things she has done is that during the Clinton administration, he implemented a rule that you could not pave roads in national forests because we got to protect the national forests. Brooke Rollins tore up that order. So she wants to be able to carve up our national forests to build roads. And she also suspended financial awards to Minneapolis and the entire state of Minnesota for alleged fraud that a right-wing conspiracy theorist decided to broadcast, even though his claims were wildly misleading. But in response to that propagandist, she said we're suspending financial aid to Minneapolis and Minnesota in general. Which is to say, Rollins, like everyone else in this administration, she's not interested in doing her job. She is interested in using her position to promote right-wing talking points, no matter how much harm she causes to farmers and other people affected by her agency. So I just want to be clear. The issue is not that she's religious. The issue isn't even that she's like saying Merry Christmas or Happy Easter or anything like that. It's that she seems incapable of separating her personal faith from the secular institution she is supposed to run. The Department of Agriculture is not a church. The employees who work under her are not her congregation. Either she doesn't know this or she doesn't care, and either answer is okay. This is Christian nationalism for you. And I got to say, reading through this lawsuit, it struck me how it feels like it's such low stakes given everything that's happening right now. Like, is this really the worst thing the administration has done? No, absolutely not. But that doesn't mean she should be able to get away with it, right? Like, they've normalized abusing their position so much that major scandals in previous administrations are just, another day that ends in Y with this one. But the bottom line is what Rollins is doing here is still illegal, and the court should say so. Okay, I will stop there. What questions we got here? Email is a weird format for proselytizing. It is, but if you're not directly talking to everybody, that's the way to get your word out. Like, I don't know what their Slack channels are like. I don't know how else she speaks to people in the department. So if that's the method she has, she's going to use it. She probably knew people would have issues with this, so she can now promote how Christians are persecuted. I am waiting. I am so waiting for someone from her department or her team to say this is proof that Christians are being discriminated against because you're not allowing me to proselytize to the Jewish and Buddhist and atheists who are under me. It's almost like keeping people like this out of office was intended by the people who wrote the Constitution. And wouldn't it be nice if we could hearken back to the people who wrote this Constitution, despite all of their flaws too? But yeah, I agree. On the 250th anniversary, no less. This is part of the Seven Mountain Mandate. I mean, their whole thing is we want to take over these areas of culture and government. Politics is one of those mountains. So yeah, I don't know if she's doing it because of the Seven Mountains, but very much everyone in this administration is like, what can I do to inflict as much damage as possible to the country? And as long as they have some strategic plan to do that, Trump isn't going to do anything about it. Republicans aren't going to do anything about it. I think Brooke Rollins got confirmed with like 72 votes in the Senate. It wasn't even close. So even Democrats voted for her. All right, I got one last story for you. It's a quick one, but I wanted to share it with you. So let me pull this up. All right, I'm going to go ahead. Oh, Miss Rachel, love her. Okay. Not long ago, I did a story about a guy here. His name is Che An. He is a self-described Christian apostle who is currently running to be governor of California. And the last time I talked about him a couple of weeks ago, it was because of a hilarious story, because this guy is like, God wants me to be governor. That's why I'm running as a Republican to be governor of California. And I mean, he's nowhere close in the polls to being in the top 2 in the primary or anything like that. He's not even close. But again, neither was Zohran Mamdani long before he became mayor of New York City. So Che An's like, I'm running. I'm in this thing. And when I talked about him a couple weeks ago, it's because the state told him, you're not going to be on the ballot for the primary. Why not? Because he didn't turn in his last 5 years worth of tax returns, even though state law says you got to turn in your tax returns if you want to be on a ballot. He made a paperwork mistake because God told him to run for governor. God did not tell him to fill out the paperwork he needed to fill out. And he went to court over this, and the court was like, read the rules, you moron. You're not going to be back on the ballot. So as of now, he's not on the ballot, but he's still running. He's still making appearances everywhere. And now he's telling people to just make him a write-in candidate. And he thinks he could still win that way. And that allows him to go around and raise money for what? I don't know. It's not commercials or anything like that. But so that's Che An. So he recently did an interview on a conservative Christian podcast. And one of the things he was talking about is a law that he would change if he were governor. And here's the background you need to know. In 2024, there was a ballot initiative. It was called Prop 36. Basically, people were mad that people were let loose on the streets because, liberals, they allowed drug addicts to go back on the streets instead of incarcerating them. And Democrats were trying to rein that back in a bit. And so Prop 36 imposed harsher punishments for certain crimes. So among them, if you were caught possessing illegal drugs and you had similar convictions in the past, you would now be charged with a felony. Meaning you could go to jail or you could go to rehab. And if you went to rehab and you completed rehab, then the charges against you would be dismissed. It was a way of trying to keep a little more accountability into the system. Now, one study found that like there's been limited success for people who enter rehab in those conditions. And that's a separate issue. Is this the right solution for how to handle addiction, drug abuse, things like that? Fine. I'm not taking a position on that right now. But basically, in this interview, Che-An argued that the previous law, which Prop 36 was intended to fix, put a lot of drug users back out onto the streets. And he said that led to a rise in homelessness, and that in turn made the drug problem even worse. So he was asked, what would you do about this problem? And his solution was, well, we got to make sure Prop 36 is enforced, giving people a choice of jail or rehab, but he had a special way to fix rehab. Specifically, he would make sure they all go to Jesus rehab. I want to play this clip for you so you could hear what his solution to the drug crisis would be as governor.
And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give them the option. I'm going to enforce Prop 36, make it a felony again if you're a drug pusher, and I'm going to give them an option to go into treatment.
Come on.
And if they don't go to treatment, and I'm going to make it a Christian treatment. I'm going to be faith-based treatment, not a Christian, but a faith-based, because all the nonprofit organizations that are helping the homeless, they can't preach the gospel. Because it's separation
It's
of church.
horrible.
It's terrible.
To receive so many
But
grants
the ones
is the
that
same
are
way.
effective are people like Dream Center with Matthew Barnett,
Yes,
my
doing
friend.
an amazing job.
And they're really seeing kids come off the streets, getting not only delivered and healed up, but
set
they're
on fire
learning,
for
they're
Jesus.
learning job skills to go back and be
Yes.
productive. And if they don't want to go to these treatment centers, I'm going to put them back in prison. As simple as that.
Come on.
And my prisons are going to be reformed because we're going to preach the gospel in the
That's
prison.
right.
I'm going to have, prison
right.
fellowship come in and preach
love
the
it.
So it's going to be a detox, but also the gospel is going to be presented to them.
Yikes. First of all, that interviewer isn't listening to a damn thing he's saying, just interrupting him throughout. But so what Che-An is saying is, yeah, the options right now are jail or rehab, but he's going to make it a Christian rehab, and he's complaining because right now it's not a Christian rehab, and that's the problem. But also if they pick jail, it's going to be Jesus jail, so he's going to convert you no matter what as governor. That's his big platform. First of all, the idea that abuse of that if you abuse one harmful substance, the idea that you could fix that by giving them another harmful substance, that's absurd. Not to mention illegal. The government cannot impose religion on people. This would be a violation of the California Constitution, the federal Constitution. I know that doesn't matter to guys like him, but just saying. It's not like he's basing this off of evidence. It's not like he's saying if they go to Christian rehab, everything works out fine. That's not the case at all. He just assumes his religion is going to be right for everybody. And while, look, there are faith-based rehab clinics out there, and they might be useful for people who want to go down that route. But there is no evidence that forcing one particular religion on people who reject it or who are not Christian is effective. It's not there. On doesn't care about that. He's not interested in their recovery. He's interested in target practice. He sees them as not humans. They are just people to convert. They are a tally mark for him. So if he gets power as governor, he's like, you know what I would do? I would force my religion on others because apparently he's incapable of persuading anybody to adopt it. So he has to force it on them. So I guess it's a good thing he'll never be governor. He's not even on the ballot. It's just this is what these people say when they are talking to other conservative Christians for an audience of other conservative Christians. It's not like he's saying this in a debate. And I know he's not really being interviewed by secular news outlets because he's not a factor in the upcoming primary, but still, it's just a wild thing that these people say to each other behind what is really closed doors, even though it's on YouTube and whatnot. So anyway, dumb idea. Another reason he shouldn't be governor, but he won't be. So, all right. I just wanted to play that for you. That's it. What questions we got here? What if they're Muslim or Jewish? I see a lot of lawsuits. Well, now you're thinking a step ahead. What if people don't want to go to Christian rehab? Wouldn't that be a problem? And the answer is yeah. Yeah, you're going to see a lot of lawsuits if he went through with this, which is, by the way, not a thing he could even do because the legislature is not going to go through with that. But again, you're assuming Che-On cares about people who are not Christian, just like him. And the answer is he doesn't. If you are Muslim, you are just not a Christian yet. You're not a person in and of yourself. So yeah, there would be lawsuits, but that's why you'd be an idiot to do something like what he is proposing. Doesn't that infringe their First Amendment rights? Same answer. Yes, it does. Yes, it would. The courts cannot force you. By the way, there have been actual lawsuits where courts said you are struggling with alcohol addiction. You got to go through a program. But if Alcoholics Anonymous is the only option they give you, because that says you have one of their 12 steps is giving yourself over to a higher power. There have been lawsuits over that. Like, can you go through a secular alcohol rehab that is also evidential? Like, there is evidence that it works. I mean, there are lawsuits over this stuff. So what Che-On is proposing is even worse than all that stuff, because Alcoholics Anonymous says, we didn't tell you which higher power you got to believe in. But anyway, yeah, it would infringe upon the First Amendment rights. Lesser cases, not as serious, have successfully sued for the same reason, is the point I'm trying to make. I went to Jesus rehab and I've been free of Jesus for over 20 years. Thanks, y'all. Well done. May we all go to Jesus rehab and be rid of the Jesus. All right, we're done. Thank you so much. Thank you, Den, for sticking around. Thank you all for watching. And remember, go subscribe to the newsletter, friendlyatheist.com. And if you haven't, you can always support the channel at patreon.com/Hemant. I appreciate that. I will see you next Thursday. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody.